Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now in the last video on the Mosquito build I showed the nacelles, the wiring in the wing, but what I didn't show was the undercarriage, which I've addressed that by having a separate video for that. But what I also didn't show was all the wiring and how it fits, or how I fitted it into the nacelles to make it easier for me to hook up. So what I thought I'd do is I'd show you the nacelles because they're now all ready to be buttoned up. In other words, I can move on from this part of the build and get back to actually constructing the fuselage. So let's have a look on the workbench and I'll show you what I've been talking about. And as you can see now, there are wires in the nacelles. So the undercarriage, we know from the last video how to put that together. I put that in the nacelles, but I've also spoke in previous videos about using my S-bus to PWM converter so that I can run one single cable back from the nacelles back to the center of the fuselage to the receiver. So there's my, just hold that up to the camera, just in there, get around that way there, you can just see my, on its side, the PWM to S-bus converter. I've got the aileron cable running through into that. I've got my retracts, I've got my flaps running through to that. And I did say originally that I was going to run the throttle cable back through to the fuselage along the leading edge here behind the rads. But few people, and Paul in particular, Paul Johnson in particular, mentioned the fact that if you're running your servo cable alongside your power leads, you could well get an induced EMF. I've never had that problem in the past with all the models that I've built, with any of the models I built, where I've had the cables in close proximity to power lines, but what's the point of risking it? So plan B was to put the throttle cable now into the S-bus to PWM converter, which is absolutely fine. And I've mounted the ESC here on top of my servo plate, and I've just used a bit of plasticard strap to hold that down. Obviously I haven't got the main cables in, but I've soldered all connections on, so my XT60s have been soldered on, and all other bullet connectors for the motors have been soldered in place, as we can see here. So it's all ready for the motor. I'm not going to put the motors on yet, I'm just going to tuck the wiring away. One thing I remembered to do was to write down on the fuselage, or somewhere on the fuselage, or on the wing I should say, what each channel was. Let's just try and get that into view on the camera. You can see there that I've just put here, scribble down what each channel was, because obviously when I've got the S-bus to PWM converter in place, then each one has got 4 channels. Each of the 4 pins can be assigned to different channels. So in effect what I've got is on the port wing, I've got channel 7 throttle, 8 undercarriage, 9 flaps, 10 ailerons, and on the starboard one I've got 11 throttle, 12 undercarriage, 13 flaps and 14 ailerons. Okay, and I'm going to be using because I run Free Sky equipment, I'm going to be running with this little Archer R6 Plus receiver, and there's the cable wiring connector for the S-bus. So I suppose the thing to do is to make sure it all works. So let's just try and get it so that the camera can pick up most, if not all of it. Bring it over there a bit so you can see this one in operation. So I'm just gonna, I've got my Y lead connecting my two nacelles in place, and once I've checked that and made sure everything's okay, I can then put the bandage on the wing. But anyway, let's plug the Y lead into my S-bus port on the receiver. Let's switch my transmitter on.
Welcome to Ethos. Fail-safe not set.
And I'm just going to use a separate power supply just to power it up. Obviously normally it'd be powered up from the ESC. So let's just plug this in. So plugged in. Let's waggle the stick on the transmitter. Well, that's certainly operating the aileron servo. Let's just bring that into view here. So it's operating that. I've got my flaps here. So the push rod is being operated. I haven't got the motors connected, so there's no point in checking those. So the final thing to do is to check that the retract's operational, which they are. Try and get it so you can see both. There we go. Now they're all on separate channels, as I said earlier, so I could put a delay on one of them so one leg goes up slightly later than the other and drops vice versa, but that's fine tuning. So everything's good, it's all working, it's all ready for me to move on now. So just retract the gear. So I can now forget about the wiring, it's all done, it all works. I can now concentrate on putting the glass tape bandage on the centre of the wing. I can then construct the rest of the fuselage, which then means I can put the flaps on. The ailerons I have already put a bevel on, so they're fine. So yes, I can now move on with the rest of the build. Well, there you have it, guys. I said it was going to be a short video, and sure enough it was. But at least it's got the nacelles out of the way, all the bits and pieces involved in them. And arguably they are the most complicated part of the build. As I've said in previous videos, trying to sort out where things go, putting them in the right order so things don't foul up. But hopefully I got it sorted. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Thumbs up down below, and any comments put in the comments box down below, and I'll get back to you when I can. So hopefully see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. Cheers.